Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
This is your time. This is your call to arms. For the Cryptid Connection is your voice. I'm your host, Jennifer.
And I'm your host, Stephen. Welcome to Cryptid Connection.
The Cryptid Connection podcast is brought to you by CryptidConnection.com, a website dedicated to you, one who has interest in all things cryptid and paranormal. CC is a place where you can enjoy a hassle-free lifestyle and community of Bigfoot pursuit. Stop by via the internet and visit. Guarantee you will start to feel at home. CryptidConnection.com.
Hello and welcome to Cryptid Connection. This episode we have Randy Savig out of Missouri. Randy, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
We're doing okay.
Doing good.
Randy, a lot of people on our show may or may not be familiar with you. Would you start off with maybe telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Well, sure. I was actually born and raised in northern Minnesota, up in the farm country, and as a child, become fascinated with the wild and the wilderness and, water and everything else, and, lucky enough to be living out in the country and at a time where, the parents didn't have no problem with you roaming and exploring it. Well, as I got older, of course, responsibilities took off and all that, and one thing after another, I didn't really get to follow through with the mysteries, even though, I was still watching the In Search of shows on television, and I watched, everything I could on mysteries type situation. And then back in 1999, I had a life change go on where I had more time than I had anything else, and I started looking into mysteries of the world, whether it was cryptids, whether it was UFOs, whether it was ghosts, the whole nine yards. My interest was in the unexplained. And with that, I started reading a lot about Bigfoot. And from about 2000 to 2010, I probably read everything that was out there about it. The BFRO had a huge database that went through that. Anybody that had something on Bigfoot. I read some of the wild theories that were talked about out there, and I seem to be gravitated to the groups that were willing to do what they could to try to solve the mystery instead of seeming to want to add to the mystery with questions that really didn't pertain, as far as I was concerned, to a living animal. Well, in 2010, I finally decided I'd take it to the woods a little bit. And I went out and started looking for some of that stuff that I had read about, in my readings. And I started finding some stuff. And then it was kind of one of those, what's next now? Not really knowing what to do and kind of wandering around lost in the woods, if you will. I started being involved in the Mid-America Bigfoot Research Center. And in 2011, I joined up with that group. Now, one thing about me, I don't walk real well. That's part of the reason why I ended up with more time than I had anything else. And I was kind of thinking that, there wasn't much that I was going to be able to do with any group because of that. Well, the fellow that took me under his wing, Don Stockton, was, again, a member of the MABRC, and he kind of turned me on to audio collection. Excuse me. And during that time frame, he showed me the different stuff of, parabolic microphones, how they're used, And again, he was one that would make his own and taught me that craft too. In fact, I buy recorders, but as far as the microphones go, I own 3 parabolics. One of them is a large 36-inch parabolic. And again, they're all homemade. They, taking scrap parts from this to that to the other thing to put it all together to make it work. Well, part of doing audio is, again, a lot of comparison work because, again, you have to know what regional animals you have and all that stuff. And that's stuff that Don Stockton helped me with. Well, then went on my first expedition with the MABRC, and I was hooked. I mean, they could, with the equipment that others have, 4-wheelers and stuff like that, they could take me into places in the woods to set up where they thought the activity was there, and we would set up. And I mean, ever since then, it's been hooked. I mean, the MABRC in 2013 bestowed on me the honor of being Researcher of the Year. Since then, I've become part of the Evidence Review Board. I've become what they call a senior researcher, which you put a lot of time in the field and kind of show that you can stand your own ground if things would happen in the woods with, common sense instead of running off. And I also became a Missouri State Director here, 5-6 years ago. And with the group, I've learned not only a lot about the thoughts of Bigfoot, but I've learned how to deal with other people more, how to work as a team a lot more. For the most part, I was kind of a loner most of my life. And again, they've opened up a lot of things to me on a personal level as well as on the Bigfoot level. And, again, now I'm living in the southwestern corner of Missouri. I, again, opened that research site back in about 2010, and it's been an interesting run.
So how has the Bigfoot lifestyle affected your outside of Bigfoot life?
Well, again, I think it's helped me deal with people when it comes to a level deeper than, hey, it's a nice day out. When people ask questions, not only just pertaining to Bigfoot, which, most of the people that know me know that I deal with Bigfoot, but on other levels, how does that, affect this and how does that affect that? And again, it's been interesting. It's helped me find me. It's helped me find some serenity in places where I guess I never really thought I'd have it. The woods to me was always an exciting place, but now I can go out in the woods and sit with nothing and feel like, I guess it's kind of weird, but I'm at home. Nothing in the woods scares me, but sometimes being around people scare me. And, with dealing with these other people, seeing the way that they look for evidence and whatever has really opened up my eyes a lot on it.
So, Randy, how has this opened your eyes up? Can you elaborate on that?
Well, again, I was in the wood as a kid, everything seemed to have a place. And we go out, we start dealing with Bigfoot, and where does that fit in the scheme of things? Where does that fit in the woods? With dealing with that, it has just made me more aware of what's going on around me. And when it comes to other people in the woods, going by their gut reactions, going by their feelings. Some people seem to be more in tune to sounds. Some people seem to be more in tune to smells. And again, it's just kind of really opened up the world. I'm sure I'm not saying this real well, but it's a feeling that I've got. It's got to get like a contentment. It's there's mysteries in the woods, but there's nothing scary out there. I mean, everything that's out there has got logic and common sense to it. It's got a purpose out there. And when I could no longer work anymore and wasn't able to walk, I was looking for a purpose. I guess, because that's why I was looking at mysteries. And now it seems like I have found that purpose. And when I'm in the woods, I just feel so comfortable.
Randy, you're being specialized in audio now. I guess what I want to say is, what is your typical outing? How does it look? What kind of equipment do you take out? What kind of preparation do you have? And what are your goals involved for that particular outing usually? You mentioned that you have a research area, so I'm assuming you're frequenting the same area over and over and over again. How is it you set up and you go out, first off?
Okay, again, that has evolved with the time. Okay, right now, if tomorrow night I was going to go out to the woods, I'm in preparation time. This time of the year, there's not a lot of tree frogs, cicadas, and all that stuff. Parabolics work great. And one thing with a parabolic, again, you don't have to be close. You can be on another ridge with a good parabolic, and you can hear stuff that's happening on that ridge. What I have used for kind of a basis to find the routine that this troop seems to be dealing in is I will usually set between 3 and 4 recorders in different locations as I'm heading out to my main listening post area. I'll set one up in, an area that we call Tired Ridge. I'll set one up at an area that we call the Log Trail. I'll set one up at Lightning Ridge, and then I'll have the listening post at what we call Scotty's. Each one of those are in a different location. Each one of those are far enough away that the average vocalization will not happen at all of them. Now, part of the reason why I do that is, again, I've been involved in these, what I call knock-knock games. The troop that I deal with in my general area of research, they seem to use knocks as a location, not for us, but for them. It doesn't appear to be a warning knock like it does in the areas I've attended expeditions in Oklahoma. They seem like when they decide to start moving around, apparently they spread out when they're foraging, and one will knock, another one will knock in response, and you'll get back and forth that way. I know knocks don't travel very far. So again, if I have a distance between them, I can find out when I do the review, where was the most unknown vocalizations and possible knocks and stuff, what location and what date. When I review that audio, not only do I clip it and go through and if it's something I'm not sure of, analyze it better, compare it with known animals to make sure it's not a distortion. But I can pretty much tell you on that date, they appeared to be in this location. The reason why I usually pick Scotty's as far as a listening post is because we've had a lot of good activity there. So what I'll do is, generally use that as my listening post for weeks, if not months on end, and then find out where they're at in the other ones. If they're over on Tired Ridge and it seems like every 6 weeks they're over there, then what I've done is I'll take all the audio equipment I have, the parabolics, the drop boxes, that type of thing, and kind of flood that area with audio and then leave. For me, one of the most fascinating things about the audio isn't when there's people around. I want to know what they naturally do when they're just foraging through their territory. I want to know those vocalizations more than I want to know how do they, they throw rocks at people. But again, how does it differ between then and interactions that you get in a listening post or a camp? And it can be kind of eye-opening that way. I think I found some answers at different times, and that's what's helped with this, thinking that these guys are knocking for location, because it happens whether we're in the woods or not. Okay. And by using that method, we can triangulate where they're at. We can also disprove some things. You know, I've had people tell me, well, them knocks, that sure sounds like a gunshot. Well, I can't disagree. Some of them do. However, a gunshot travels more than a half mile, sometimes up to a mile. If you've got a recorder away a half, or a recorder out a half mile away, and you hear it on one recorder, but the other one doesn't record it, then 9 chances out of 10, you don't have a gunshot going on. You know, and again, some of these movements that we found on some of these suspected tallboy trails, I've set up recorders that way to try to get the information, again, of how do they travel through. You know, how much do they make their howl? How much chatter might be coming out? How much, you know, knocks are happening? And I've actually gotten lucky in a couple of times where I had them stretched out in 1.5 miles in the areas that I thought were suspected tallboy trails or travel corridors. And the first recorder, well, you can faintly hear knocks. They get louder, then they get softer. Then the second recorder will pick them up faintly, then they'll get louder, and then they'll get softer in the third one. And that, you know, everybody wants to think that they just travel through the woods fast. But according to the recordings that I've done, that 1.5 miles took about 3 hours to do. So are they...
Yeah, they're slowly going through.
Yeah, you know, so they're not just traveling from point A to point B. They are foraging through that area. I don't know what plants they might be eating, but there's berries out. There's a lot of stuff they could be eating. So again, you got those things to look at. And again, when you're out there, when you get the equipment out there, when you're not out there, you don't seem to disturb what they're doing. You know, again, that's kind of the way that over the years I've evolved into the way I set up in my own research area.
All right, let me ask you this, and I know this is going to get into the Silent Hills, the Project Silent Hills stuff. What approximately would be the distance from your microphones to the areas that you're focusing in? And then what kind of a functional arc do your parabolics have? Because I know they're directional, but are we talking, do you have them down to where they are only going to pick up within 3 or 4 degrees, or are they sensitive to, say, like 30 degrees?
It's a good question you have. Again, the 2 smaller parabolics I have are actually just glorified salad bowls. They're probably at a distance of 150, 200 yards. They're probably at about a 90-degree shot, if you will. And they're not nearly as precise as the 36-inch I've got. The 36-inch I got is a complete parabellum. And again, that one has got some range that won't quit. In fact, part of doing audio or anything when it comes to research is you got to know your equipment. We have done tests here at the farm where you can be over 400 foot away, and that big parabolic will pick up normal human speech to where you can hear it as plain as what we're talking right now. That one has got about a spread of, I'm going to say within a half mile, you're at about 120 degrees.
Okay.
But again, at that type of distance, it's a wide spread. But as you get closer and closer, again, you know how it narrows in. You know?
Yeah.
And that's the one that I use. I've got one ridge that I've probably recorded more audio on than any place else on it. I call it Pine Ridge. Well, the reason I do it's obvious. It's full of pines. Now, I don't go into that area because it's one of those areas that When I do go in, I get a slight discomfort of being in there. Now, it's one of the few places I've ever been where I go in there and it just kind of gives me the creepy feeling like I'm being watched. And again, that's about a quarter mile from another ridge that I set the parabolic on. And I always aim it towards that ridge. And again, I can get some pretty interesting audio that way.
Now, one thing I didn't catch earlier, you're obviously, I'm assuming you're recording the parabolic. This is a static setup that you're putting in. Are you able to live monitor from your one position that you're at? Do you have like a wireless setup which is relaying the different microphones to you to a central location?
No, at this point in time, I don't. And the problem that I have, I'm on the western edge of the Ozark Mountains. And again, you got nothing but hills and hollers. And unfortunately, there's always seems to be a ridge taller than where you're at.
Yeah.
So that line of sight doesn't, or that connection of the wireless just does not make it. I had one guy do some experimenting. It wasn't myself, but he had a wireless mic. And even though it was supposed to be, good at 300 foot, through the brush and the hills, we could barely get about 85 foot out of it before it would start losing.
I had a camera system that I had set up to do, I just based it on a wireless security camera system. And the idea was I could deploy it in the woods around my camp, and I'd be able to monitor it on a central location. And you're right, the cameras and the equipment and all that, of course, it had the standard Wi-Fi specs. It would say, hey, 300 feet straight line, and the woods aren't particularly dense or anything. But you're right, at about 80 to 100 feet, the signal started dropping. And so I can completely understand where you're going with that and the hassles you've had with that.
We even tried one time where, we do use walkie-talkies with the MABRC and again in my own research area. And sort of 35 mile, they never make that far, maybe in the flatlands with nothing.
Yeah.
We've even tried to put one of those to where we could hear further away. And again, by the time you lose the distortion and all that, there's no audio worth collecting on that, in my opinion.
I would agree with you. That would be my experience too. You mentioned you leave some of these up for extended periods. How are you solving your battery problem, your power problem? Is it just you have a large amp hour battery, or do you swap them out?
Well, again, the ones that I use primarily is my for the parabolics as well as my drop boxes are Sony name. The 333 is one of them. I think it's now a 343 they've come up with. They keep changing it, but they've got, during the summertime, you can get 60 to 70 hours of battery life off a regular set of alkaline batteries.
Right.
And those are my mainstay. Those I will put out and just let them run for, 3 nights and however many days, are in between it. Usually I'll set it out on a Monday afternoon, leave it until, Wednesday to pick it up. Generally, I'm right at the edge of the battery in the summertime. In the wintertime, of course, they suck batteries quicker. I got to go out about every 36 hours. And if I'm going to leave them out there long term, the longest I've ever left them out has been a week. And I did one battery change in a week, and it was the summertime. Okay. I do have a H2N that I have also rigged together with those battery packs that you can get for charging your phones.
Yes.
There's one, the one I've got has got 2.5 amps on one time or 2.7 on one port, and the other's a 1 amp that it puts out. If you put in that 1 amp, you can run that H2N for about 5 days on that before you run out of battery power. So that's another option that the last couple of years I've used from time to time.
I have heard good things about that Zoom, that H2N. I've never been able to play with one on my own. Everything I use is either I'm sorry, go ahead.
They are fantastic. If money was no object, I'd have a whole arsenal of them. I mean, you figure they'll run 24 hours on battery life. You can set them up for 360 or surround sound, as they call it. And what I do with my H2N is every time I push the button that says record, I'm always looking to the north. The screen, when I look at the screen, it's always facing north. And you can go from omnidirectional to a directional as far as you can hear where the sounds are coming from. Is it in front of you, behind you, side to side? How is it moving? And I mean, that was a real game changer when I got that H2N. And in fact, that was the one that the older style H2 that sucked through batteries quick. That was the one I was using when I recorded that something in the woods mimicking me that one night. That was just amazing to me.
Interesting. When you're going out to your research area, and again, if I miss this, I apologize. Are you usually going alone, or do you usually have a partner with you?
Well, start with I had just myself. And I have taken on a research partner. In fact, he's a very, very good friend. He's become a very good friend, and he actually lives here on the farm now. We go out together a lot. And there's times where he's working and he can't go out, and if I need to go or want to go out, I go out. I don't have a problem going out by myself. Let's just say I'm a little less adventurous. I stay close to the truck. I make sure that if I need to get in the truck and come back in the morning to get whatever equipment I left behind because of, a feeling of, or, bear come through or think there might be a cougar or something like that would end up happening, I can bail out without putting myself in danger. My wife would never allow that.
So what are you not very good at that you believe that you could improve upon in regards to your field research techniques and knowledge?
Well, the thing that I think I'm lacking on most is reliable data to compare with. And what I mean by that is, again, we've all got, Grandpa told us, 20 years ago, this is what coyotes sounded like. But again, Grandpa didn't see the coyote. So is it an actual coyote? When it comes to going to university sites to try and find verifiable information, it's difficult to do. I've composed a library on my computer with not only the sounds, but I use Audacity as my editing program, and that's where I do all my reviewing now. And that way I can see the signature as I'm listening to it and how it builds and how it maintains. And a lot of times I'm hearing these people, well, that's got to be this or that's got to be that. And not that I'm saying, no, it isn't. I just don't have a way of verifying it. Even the scientists out there, yep, they know coyotes are out there and they know certain things that coyotes sound like. But what about the one-offs? I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever seen some of these comparisons and stuff on, or these animals that they record on YouTube and stuff. But there was one here a while ago, about a year and a half ago, that they were showing this little porcupine that had been raised by humans, and they gave it a piece of corn. And then after they were gnawing on the corn, just enjoying it, doing its grumbles and groans of how good it was, they tried to take it away, and that thing almost sounded like it was saying, no, 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 no. And did a lot of strange vocals that way that I had never heard associated with a porcupine. So again, there was one that was making that noise on video, so it was 100% verified. But when we deal with these vocalizations out in the woods, they are completely unknown. I mean, I say because of the sightings, the tracks, some of the manipulations I found, and the sightings, of the area that these unknowns are could very easily be a Bigfoot. But again, we don't have enough data on what are all the sounds a cougar makes, what are all the sounds coyotes make, what are all the sounds raccoons make. We can go right down the list. And that's been the hardest part, and the one part that a lot of times I'm going to disregard something if I can't get closer verification of what it is. And when we're dealing with audio out in the woods, I mean, all of these programs, Audacity being one of them, it's a great program. I've really learned to use the filters and different things to isolate things. But those are made for studios. They are not made for the open expanses of woods where you've got wind, where you've got leaves, where you've got so much ambient noise that can distort audio. And little by little, I'm trying to work more with that, opening up some of those spectrograms bigger and bigger all the time so that I can try to figure out if this is or is not a distortion. You know, that's been the hardest part, and that's the one thing that I work on the most is trying to, you know, I don't want to put anything out that isn't legit. I mean, it's happened. I've had to retract it. Okay, yep, you are right. That's what it was. Here's the verification of it. I made a mistake. But, you know, Bigfoot community, for the most part, you can do 200 things right, and if you do one thing wrong, guess what you're noted for? So a lot of times I'm apprehensive of putting some of that stuff up.
I can understand that.
Very true.
It is definitely a failing of the community. People don't support each other. They just remember the last time you messed up. And it's, you know.
Yeah.
And what they did right.
Well, so much of it is competition. And it really hinders. I think a good chunk of why we have not progressed any farther than where we are over the years is because of that very tendency.
Yes, I agree.
You mentioned that you're using Audacity. Do you mind if I ask what any other software or anything that maybe you do use?
You know, that is the only one that, you know, again, hey, this is out of my pocket like it is every other researcher out there. So, again, Audacity is free. I mean, that is the only software that I use is Audacity. I mean, I've heard of others, and I know other people use others. Some of them have got more colorful spectrograms, but to me, I've gotten so used to Audacity that those colorful spectrograms are more confusing to me than what I deal with on Audacity. So
I can understand that. When you use Audacity, do you find yourself referencing the spectrogram, or do you tend to go more audio-wise and by listening?
All of my review is done with the spectrogram.
All right.
Even though I'm listening, I mean the audio, the everything is on the spectrogram. I don't do anything just by hearing. You know, the reason for that is I'll give an example. There was one night that I was out, and we were, you know, doing what we normally do at camp, Bernie and I was sitting there we were visiting. We were talking about anything and everything. And there was what I thought was a bark, you know, or type situation. And, you know, we stopped, we heard it. Oh, that was a woof of a dog or a bark of a dog. And on we go. Well, upon audio review, it didn't show a dog bark. It showed a whoop. And, you know, that was fairly close to where, hindsight being 2020, if I would have been listening more and not taken it for that's got to be what it is, we might have gotten to be able to play the mimic game back and forth to draw it in a little bit. You know, and so much of that is that our ears can play tricks on us as much as what our eyes can at times. I can hear something that in the woods, I'm going to say, well, that is definitely that. But when you get it on the spectrogram and you're looking at it, the signature along with it, and what you're hearing the second time doesn't sound what you thought you were hearing in the woods. I'm one that I do not have a listening post at night at camp without a camp recorder running. Part of the reason for that is because, again, we can reference what our actions were when we heard that. Mm-hmm. And as a researcher and a research team, I find that we're misidentifying something in the woods, then we both have to work at focusing on that type of thing so we don't keep making mistakes and missing stuff that was more prevalent or less prevalent, we should have paid more attention or less attention. And that, I think, has helped quite a little too. But without that spectrogram to see it, anybody that's done 100 hours worth of audio review knows that it's not really, really exciting. In fact, it can be downright boring.
Yes, it can.
And if you're not got something, even if you back up a couple of seconds to be able to see what it was when you've heard something, without being able to see that, you miss a lot. And I've noticed, again, and it's with myself, I can't say any others are this way, but what I hear in the woods and what I hear on review, I'm betting I'm missing 30% of what is recorded by what I'm actually hearing in the woods. Now, I worked in factories for many years. My hearing's not the best. So I can write some of it off to that. But again, is that an excuse I'm coming up with? Or is it our brains are not, when we're in an environment where our senses are more keen, are we getting enough sensory overload that if our subconscious mind doesn't think it's a threat, we don't take any notice to it? Does that make sense to you?
It does.
Absolutely.
And I think we get into that type of situation to where when we heighten all of our senses in the woods, we seem to overlook things. Where I get back home, I get it up on the computer and get it all ready to go and fire it up. I'm in the comfort of my own home. My senses aren't that way, so I can dedicate more senses to my hearing versus, shadow play at night or possible movement or, whatever. And I seem to be able to hear more in the audio review than I am at the time.
The recording that you're doing, well, first off, let me ask you this. I'm assuming you're recording in MP3, but are you recording MP3 or are you recording WAV?
I've recorded both file size-wise, MP3. I think when it comes to your CD level, I think that's probably as good as what you need. Now, by saying that, I've got to kind of go against that a little bit. With this H2N recorder, it is picking up some low frequency stuff that my Sony's won't.
Right.
In fact, that one, it says on the box it can record down to 40 hertz. And there are some of those real low tones that I see on the spectrogram, but my hearing is either bad enough or it's out of the range or what, that I'm not always hearing what I'm seeing. And I don't really know what to make of that. But again, there is some of that, and I thought, I haven't done it, but I thought maybe if I change that over to WAVE, and made some huge files that maybe it would be able to pull something out that way. But as of yet, I haven't done it.
Well, the reason why I was asking was, I know Wave is a more, what's the word? It's a more cohesive recording. It's closer to an analog. It's got a much better sample rate. It goes over a wider range, whereas MP3 is usually optimized just to the human range of hearing. I've heard arguments both ways, and I am one that I have preached that, hey, if you have the option, you should use Wave. But I myself, I still use MP3 most of the time, because of the storage issue and because of the file size issue. Let me ask you, how are you? Do your recorders divide your files up for you to a preset size, or are you dividing them up once they get onto the computer, or are you just are you examining them as one large file?
The Sonys will record on 6-hour increments. The H2, I get about 18 hours. I think it's 1 gig that they do. And I do not cut them down. When they get, it might take 20 minutes to load up on Audacity, but I'll still use whatever the recorder recorded it in. That's what I end up putting onto Audacity to do the review with. Now, that doesn't mean I still do it all in one day. We know pause works, and, if I can only, listen to 2 hours of audio today and 6 hours tomorrow, I can still, load up a second file if I need to. But, I try to keep them without splicing them because, again, it just, for me, it makes it, from one recorder to another, when there's, say, 20 minutes difference in time, what I'll do is I'll listen to recorder 1, 6 hours, recorder 2, that same 6 hours, recorder 3, that same 6 hours. Now, as I'm doing all those reviews, hey, I've stepped up, I've got Word now, so I put it on the computer of what I'm hearing on each one of those with the timestamp, the date stamp, the whole 9 yards, to where then I can compare. If I hear something at, 6:25 p.m. on Monday, I find 6:25 p.m. on the second and third recorder, and what were they hearing at the same time?
Right.
That way, again, if a truck was making an unusual noise or a gunshot, and, I'll do all of my recorders on the same time frames. I don't go through one recorder, then start with the second recorder, and then start with the third recorder. I go through files, time files, which one was first, which one was second, which one was third, that type of scenario.
You're making me think I need to change my setup now, because I don't... No, I'm guilty of going through the recorders one at a time, and I'll keep track of the timestamps, and usually this will go into some of your Project Silent Hills too. I try to keep my recorders roughly about 500 to 1,000 yards. Let's call it 750 usually, and I'll usually try to go in a linear pattern. So like if I can go down a trail, or if I can go down maybe a road or something like that, a cut off road or something. But I try to get a line distance, but I've always done them one at a time. But I admit too, I'm also guilty. I will slice my MP3s. I've got a little program that'll sit there, and you put your master file in, and you just tell it, and like for me, I'll divide it up into 30-minute increments, and it just cuts the file at 30-minute intervals. And so I'll sit there and I'll end up with 30 files for that night or something. But they're all time-stamped, time referenced in order. And so I can break them down, and the reason why I do that is, honestly, I don't have the patience that you do to wait on Audacity to take 30 minutes to load. I want to.
Well,
I want to sit there and open it up, and within a minute, here it is. It's imported in the MP3. It converts it over, and boom, there. And because most of my review I do on the spectrogram, and so half the time I'm not even listening to it. I'm going through the spectrogram, and I'm visually scanning and seeing if I have anything coming up. That's because I figure if I can't pick it up clear on the spectrogram, then it's not loud enough for me to really be able to work with. And that's one thing that I'm always concerned about. And I see a lot of people, but for the record, I've never seen you do it. I have seen other people that will sit here and they will bring up calls that are so buried in the background, and they have amplified them and tried to clean up and isolate so much that I'm wondering if what you're getting at most is a distorted animal or a distorted sound. And so I sit there, and so I'm very conservative about what sounds I'll focus in on, because I want them to have a strong, or at least a reasonable presence natively on the spectrogram and everything, so that there's enough to work on. And so, but I didn't mean to digress. I apologize about that. But,
no. Again, I appreciate anybody's input of how they do it. And again, if you're getting the job done, I mean, you're hitting 90% of the vocalizations. I mean, the only thing that I find, and again, not trying to disagree with the way you do things, because everybody does things their own way. But have you ever heard leaf litter movement and realized it wasn't on the spectrogram because it's in that area where, again, there's the background noises with it, but you can plainly hear it?
I have occasionally, and I'll be honest, I'm guilty of kind of skipping over a lot of that.
And again, by skipping it, and again, each to their own. I by no means, I am not able to work. I've got more time than I got common sense a lot of times. So there's days where my body is not allowing me to do anything. I can sit here. My wife works 10-hour days, and I can listen to 6-7 hours of audio in that daytime. And again, I can get focused in, and there was times that, she'd walk in the house and I wouldn't even realize she was there. Not that it was that loud, but I was that focused in. There was times where she was joking she should get me, surgically implanted the doggone headphones so I wouldn't have to have them on my head, But again, what I've found out by doing it the way I do it, and again, time is no essence of mine. I mean, so I've got the time to do it. When you hear movement through the leaf litter, especially here in the Ozarks where every dang ridge is nothing but rock, I can hear hoof hitting rock, or I can hear where there doesn't appear to be any hoof. I can hear how an armadillo goes through the woods.
They're loud.
Well, it is. But again, how do they do it when they're foraging versus when they're scared?
Ooh.
There's two different ways.
Yep.
How do deer walk through the woods when they're eating and grazing versus when they're panicked? Then what do you do when you get this 2 or 3 steps of something that doesn't make any rock noise, and it waits for 30 seconds, maybe a minute, and then it's another step or 2? What kind of critter would that be? Could it be a big cat? Could it be a bear? Or could it possibly be a Bigfoot? And those are some of those things that I try. In fact, I find that exciting, trying to figure out what it was. And, there is also good stuff on these different university sites and places where they watch a bear in the wild, and you can see how they move. You might not be able to hear it because it would be like a National Geographic, or something. They've always got the music to keep everybody entertained. But you can see how they browse through the area, and then you can compare that visual cadence with the visual, or what you're hearing on an audio review, and try to say, okay, does that sound like how a bear would go through? Does that sound like how a cougar would go through? Or is that another one of those unknown type things?
That brings up an interesting question. In your research area, what kind of creatures do you come across? Do you have bear in your area, for example? We don't really have bear in Texas, so...
Yes, we do have black bear. In fact, I've about 1.5 miles from my main research area, there's a sow that every 2 years, just like clockwork, she has twins.
Huh.
We do have cougar that go through. There's none of them that seem to stay too long in the research area, but within 8 miles of my research area, a guy actually had to burn down his trailer house because cougar was hauling deer underneath. And he worked out of town, and when he came back, there was the dead smell, something fierce, permeated throughout all of his trailer. And when he had the DNA come out, they said that, hey, there's been a cougar living under here all winter long, dragging these carcasses under here and burying. So, again, we do have those two animals. We also have bobcat. And, again, that's a regional animal down there, too, so it's not something that you guys don't have, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. But, you know, and again, those are the type of things that I really enjoy. You know, don't get me wrong. Anytime you hear an unknown howl or something that you know, is purported to be Bigfoot, the hair goes up and, you know, the ears open up, and I mean, that stuff is great. But again, I seem to be drawn more to the focus of what might they be doing when nobody's out there? What's their natural way of doing things?
Mm.
Well, I really think you need kudos on that because you're looking at it as you're getting a more holistic view of the environment and the habitat that's there. And I really like the fact that you're having an interest. You're not just looking for Bigfoot, but you're looking for all things.
The environment related to Bigfoot.
You're wanting to know everything about that area. And there's not a lot of researchers that do that. And I think that is outstanding.
You know, I can tell you there's a horse farm that has 3 mules that's 2 miles from my nightly listening post. And I know exactly that, you know, the 2 mules sound like. And again, if they come from another direction that ain't there, it's making me wonder, now, is that possibly a mimic or is that one of their mules up?
Right.
I know where the cattle are at. I mean, in that whole area, I know which dog barks when, as far as, I mean, where the dog belongs that's making that bark. So now the dog to the east starts off, and then 10 minutes later, the one that's a half mile down the road, more to the north, barks. And then another 20 minutes down the road, the one that's to the west barks. Something was moving along that line to rile each one of them dogs up. You know, and again, to get some type of order of, well, okay, what's causing this? If you're not hearing other animals, again, could it be? And again, if you can, without trespassing too much or having your equipment seen on the road, can you move your recorders to try to find out what is riling up all those dogs?
Mm.
That brings up a question. Do you try to camouflage your recorders at all, or do you leave them out just fully visible?
The big parabolic I can't camouflage. The smaller ones that I've got, I do try to put those in brush, if you will, but unfortunately, every time the wind blows, you got these little twigs going ding, ding, ding on the side of your parabolic. So they're not as hid. My drop boxes that I use is nothing more than, well, they're old phone holders that people used to carry, kind of like a coin purse or, you know, female's purse,
right?
Just enough to fit the recorder in, with the microphone sticking in the bottom. They're black. These Sony microphones that I use, the stereo microphones, they're silver. But because of they don't have wind socks, well, they do, but if you put them on, the birds take them off about the first morning. I've used your window air conditioner foam filters that you buy. You can wrap those up and sew them on the recorder, and it works decent as a wind sock, plus it makes it black, to where the whole thing is black. And again, when it's that size of a box, nothing more than the size of the average cell phone, unless you're looking for it, you can walk right on by it and not notice it.
So they're unobtrusive to the environment. Have they ever been disturbed in any way? When you go out and pick them up, you're like, oh, that was over there. What happened to it? And you know, you see it in a different spot or something.
I've had something on 2 occasions come up and tip over parabolics, and I'm highly suspicious of what it was because of the way it came up. Have I had the drop boxes? I usually hang in a tree to where they've stayed put, but I have had at times, both night and day, again, where it sounds like sticks or something are deliberately being thrown and hit the parabolic. You know, and I've had other researchers come into my area that also set up, and I mean, he was one that, kind of like you, that likes the smaller file size. About every hour, he'd go and, you know, shut the recorder, tell it not, you know, off, and then record again so that it would start a new file instead of cutting it up. And every time he got away from his recorder after redoing the file, something went hit the parabolic. Each time he did that all night long. That night also, there was some other things going around where, you know, there was eye shine being seen, there was some rocks being thrown and stuff like that. So I do believe they were very close most of the night watching what we were doing out there.
Okay, Randy, you were part of Project Silent Hills. Could you explain to our audience what that was and kind of what your role in it was? And what were the goals? And did you accomplish them?
Okay. It's an interesting thing. You know, when we first started mimicking them, the first 3.5 years I researched this area, we went out there, we'd set up camp, set up the recorders, and we did nothing as far as trying to lure them in. We didn't do any howls, we didn't do any knocks, you know, all the stuff that you see on television that people try. We didn't do any of that. I was not interested in doing that type of thing. And like I talked about, one time when we were out at night, I was sharing with my research partner about the first time I thought I heard mimicking in that woods. And as we were going through that, I was talking to him about that. And, you know, what it was, I don't have a problem sharing it. With, if anybody's ever been in factories or around big equipment, they've got what they call a backup alarm. It sounds like beep, beep, beep as it's going back. Well, I heard that in a direction that there's no way that there was a piece of equipment to do that. Now, this was also when I was very early in my research to where I didn't have audio equipment set up. I hadn't got into the audio yet, but I was sharing this with my research partner, Bernie. And 4 times during this telling of it, I would go beep, beep, beep. And when I quit talking, all 4 of those times, whether that beep, beep, beep was the end of my sentence, or if there was more to be added, something in the woods went beep, beep, beep.
Oh.
And that was recorded on the camp recorder that we had about 50 yards from camp.
Wow.
50 foot. And when I did that audio review, I thought, okay, this happened. This is game on. If you guys can mess with me, I can mess with you. Now, about a month later, we were up on another listening post area we call Lightning Ridge. Lightning Ridge is, again, on top of a ridge. The reason we call it that is it seems like every oak tree on that ridge has been hit by lightning. Anyway, we heard some knocks. We picked up an old log that was luckily strong enough, and we went back and forth. If it knocked once, we knocked once. If we heard 2 knocks, we knocked 2 times. If it was 3 knocks, we knocked 3 times. And you could hear this thing getting closer and closer. And I assume at one point it found out who we were and what we were doing because it stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to guesstimate, by now knowing what I do from the Silent Hills Project, it was within 100 foot of us. It was that loud. Now, on my Facebook, all you got to do is go to, or not Facebook, sorry about that, my YouTube. If you go to the YouTube search bar and put in my name, Randy Savig, it will put all of the audio that I've collected and posted with the MABRC and other places on that YouTube channel. I started that YouTube channel for sharing with other researchers what I got. Anyway, after that night, we tried again another night when we heard a knock, but all we were finding was dead, nasty wood that wouldn't make any sound. So I got the wild idea, hey, I'm going to go get me an axe handle, because that way I can know I can hit a tree and it can make noise. And I did. Now, at that time, I was still pretty young in audio comparison and knowing really what was making the noise out there. So one night we had nothing but dead nothing. I mean, anybody that does this type of things knows there's a lot more nights like that than anything else. So before the end of the night, I had the camp recorder, but I also had another recorder as the crow flies, maybe a half mile at most, ridge top to ridge top, where I had that recorder set up. So at midnight, I told Bernie, I said, well, we're going to find out which tree makes the most noise. That should tell you a lot there. I hit a cedar tree, I hit an oak tree, and there was another hickory sitting there. I hit each one of them 3 times with that doggone hickory axe handle. Mm-hmm. And then just for more giggles, I made 3 howls. During the audio review, even though, again, nothing happened that night, there was 3 recorders. I listened to 3 recorders of nothing but night noises. But the one that was about a half mile away, when it came time, I was hearing my howls. They were sounding pretty good. I could, yep, that was it. And I knew that there was 3 sets of knocks from 3 different trees right afterwards. And I never heard them.
Oh.
And that's what started the Silent Hills Project. Bernie and I got together. There's an old logging trail on that one property we do where there's pretty much a straight line. And I'd sit at camp. He took the stick. He went X distance, banged on the tree, went further, banged on the tree, and we had the recorder going, banged on the tree until I couldn't see him anymore, and he kept banging on trees. And we realized that it didn't take very far. There was one time where, sorry about that, if that came through, I guess someone was trying to text me, no big deal. I saw one time where I could see Bernie hitting the tree, but where I was at, I couldn't hear it. And I shared that information with the MABRC. And, with that type of information, everybody thought those knocks were such a long distance away. Nobody paid much attention to them unless they were really, really, really loud. Well, then they're, a quarter mile away. Well, anyway, we got into an area during one of our Memorial Day expeditions where, again, we had a road and we set up intervals of where we were going to go. And we set up the same knocking stick, same type of scenario. We even did some of it where it was right on the road, and then we stepped off into the woods a little bit further where you couldn't see the person knocking. And then we did some call blasting. Robert Swain from the Arkansas Primate Evidence Society, APES, he was involved with that. And, we used his call blaster like he would have it, and, would do that too. And we went down this road. And we found if you're really listening, and I'm talking no talking amongst the people, relatively quiet, you're not going to hear a knock over 900 foot away. The call blasting you could hear about a half mile away. But an actual knock using that same hickory handle, if you were listening, you might make 900 foot. If you were visiting and talking, it was probably closer than 400 foot if it was enough to where you could hear going on. And again, just one of those things that, it blew me away, and it also blew them away. That, because again, these are guys that have been around the block more than I had, the ones that I look up to as mentors and stuff, and they were just amazed at that. And we did it during the summertime. We thought, wow, these leaves must be what's doing it, or something like that, of why it wasn't carrying very far. In the wintertime, same area, and I'm talking same area, they had a winter expedition. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get out for that one. I just wasn't able to do so. But they did it again. And with the cold weather, I think if I'm remembering the data right, it's all on the Facebook. Just go to Facebook and look up Project Silent Hills, and all the data is there. And in the wintertime, that range of being able to hear was cut in half. No leaves, but it was cut in half. With the temperatures being dropped, the density of the air is so much more that sound cannot travel as far. One other step that we want to do is do it over water, because again, anybody that's been on expeditions around water, it seems, my opinion, without data, it seems to travel farther by reflecting off from the water. I noticed that when I was at one of the folk expeditions. That there's a joint expedition that APES and the MABRC puts on every year. But that is a nutshell. All the decibel meter, the decibel readings, and all that is in the Silent Project Hills project that we did. And it was a real eye-opener, because, we had people at camp with thermal cameras at night that would hear a knock and, oh, that's a long ways away, and never really scan around camp to see if there was something close by. Where now, if there's a knock heard, especially if we're visiting and doing normal camp stuff, you bet those thermals are out and they're looking around, because it's a lot closer to what we thought it was.
I'm really glad you brought up the fact that temperature played a major role in it. I was waiting for you to bring it up, because I was going to ask you if you hadn't. As far as your idea over water, I think I would agree with you 100% there. Sound seems to carry farther over water, especially in calm conditions. And I think that would definitely be an interesting measurement. Did y'all do anything other than just wood knocks? Because I know I experimented with a small air horn, like a boat air horn, and marked my distance from the recorder, and that way, because I knew I had a fixed decibel sound source, and so I wanted to measure how far away from my recording or my recorder, 100 yards, 200 yards, 300 yards, that kind of a thing. Did you guys ever do anything like that?
Yes, again, the cold blaster that we used on that was, again, Robert Swain's, it was set at 115 decibels.
Okay.
We also not only used the knocks, but there was some of us that, would do some whoops or some howls of some sort. And each time we did one, we did it with the decibel meter in front of us, so that we could find out what the decibel was and how they could hear it, and what the decibel meter said down the road from what it was hearing. We also did use complete ambient sound. We got an ambient sound level to where we could know where we were at and what the ambient sound was, so we could subtract that from the decibels that we were putting out to get that type of situation. And again, those numbers are definitely in Project Silent Hills, and again, it was a lot more interesting than what I ever imagined.
Wow. That's quite a lot of information, Randy. You guys have collected a good amount of information, and thank you for putting it up for people to listen to. And that's what Cryptid Connection is all about. We like to share information for the newbies out there, for maybe slight correction of what people might be doing. They could be doing better. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. If we don't all
like
compare notes, we none of us are going to go anywhere.
Exactly.
We all have to learn from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Amen to that one.
So, Randy, I'm thinking we're going to take a little break here and do something a little different. I have a game that I like to play with each of our guests. If you're amenable, it's called the Quick Cryptid Connection Query. Would you like to play a game with me, Randy?
Let's go ahead and do it.
The Quick Cryptid Connection Query is a list of cryptids that I have come up with. Now, if you have heard of them, say yay. If you have never heard of it, say nay. If you think I'm just putting letters together and making something up, you can say what? Does that sound okay? Okay, in this list, I have 3 Easter eggs. One of them is a Bigfoot cousin. One of them is a former known cryptid, now scientifically proven animal. And the third is a cryptid from your own region. Do you have any questions before we start?
Nope.
All right, let's begin the Quick Cryptid Connection Query. First one, Milta.
I haven't heard of it.
Azaban.
Can't say I've heard of that one either.
Alti.
No.
Squonk.
That one I've heard of.
Cerberus.
Nay.
Bat Squatch.
That one I've heard of.
Conreet.
Say again?
Conreet.
No.
Demogorgon.
That I've heard of.
Minghua.
Yes, I've heard of that one.
Ziphius.
No.
Alp.
No.
Ninjin.
Don't think so.
Kappa.
No.
The Missouri Monster.
Oh, yeah, Momo.
I had my mother and my daughter help me with this list, so they were Googling some of these as well. So can you tell me if you've spotted any of these Easter eggs? The former known cryptid, now scientifically proven creature, the Bigfoot cousin, and the cryptid from your own area.
Well, Momo was definitely there. You said a couple of cryptids, but again, exactly which ones was, Bigfoot cousin, I'm not 100% sure. I just know I've heard of them.
Momo was the Bigfoot cousin.
Well, yeah, Momo. I mean, that to me isn't a cousin. That's what I deal with.
Yes. The cryptid that was from your area was Bat Squatch. It's a Missouri giant bat that's been spotted.
Okay.
And
that one's up, if I'm not mistaken,
yes.
It's up towards the central and a little on the east side, yeah.
Yes. And the former cryptid, now scientifically proven creature, is the Ziphius. It was a monstrous nautical creature said to attack ships in the northern seas. It possessed the body of a fish and the head of an owl. The Ziphius is known now today is Cuvier's beaked whale. It's a widespread species of beaked whale. It's also known as the goose-beaked whale. This creature is found as far north as the Shetland Islands and as south as the Tierra del Fuego at the tip of South America.
Well, you just taught me something I didn't realize.
That's my goal.
She actually did that to two of us. I don't know where she gets these things from. She will sit there and, well, she said she had her mother help her with this.
Mother and daughter. We were both sitting around, just all three of us looking at stuff.
Oh my goodness. I don't know what bowel of the internet she pulls these things from. Anyway.
None of them, to be honest with you, to put out a trade secret, none of them I make up.
No, I know you don't make them up.
They all have some sort of history to them.
I know, and it's just unusual. That's why I'm wondering where you find these things, because you get some unusual stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, okay.
Thank you for playing that game, Randy. That was fun.
Oh, my pleasure.
Randy, when you've been out in the woods or anything related to Bigfoot, we all have these things where we just, they're head slap moments where we feel like idiots.
Face to palm.
Yeah. What was your oops moment?
The list is long.
You're more honest than most of our guests.
Well, one that happens more frequently than I want to, and I'm not going to say it's the worst one, but my sight ain't as good as a more neat old man reading glasses, and I can't see if I made the recorder go or not, and I don't have my glasses with. That's happened. Hey, can you read this and tell me if it's recording? Kind of makes you feel like an idiot, but again, hey, it's the way it is. In fact, I had one night listening post at camp that I would have swore I turned on the recorder. We actually had some activity that night, and when I do the review, it says no file.
Oh.
And I realized that it was on, but I had never pushed the button right to where it was actually recording. I didn't have my glasses on, so, I got a little bit of a story, but nothing to back up the story.
I hate it when that happens. I really do.
Yeah. And again, I wish I could say that was a one-time occurrence, but I'm a slow learner, so it wasn't more than. One of the oops moments that I had, I used to have a truck that was made for the woods. It was lifted. It had all that good stuff on it. And I'm going to go home. When we go out in the woods, day or night, there's a recorder that, on that truck, we left it on there because it seemed like stuff in the back was getting messed with when we were out even during the day. I suspected it was a raccoon, didn't know, but I was going to record it. Well, what do? Get in the truck, get a bottle of water, drink a bit, fire up the truck, and we drive. And get out, and where's that recorder? And that's one of the missing recorders. If you should ever happen to be in Southwest Missouri and you find a Sony, 3300, it's probably mine. Because again, I don't know where the recorder went. And I left it on top of the doggone truck, and away we drove off. And that was one of them, and worse yet, I had people with me, and, so I was caught at it. I couldn't just say it under my breath quietly to a certain group of people. It's been known throughout the entire group because of it.
Don't let him drive off without checking the top of the truck next time.
That's it. And again, it wasn't even nice enough to fall in the back. I don't know where it went.
I am notorious for having a drink.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be sitting near the front of our Jeep, and I'll put the drink on either the fender or on the front bumper just to rest it on, and then I'm notorious for forgetting it and driving off. I completely understand. I totally understand exactly where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
Oh well, That's good. You see, I like Randy. He's good.
He's human.
He is. Yes.
Very much so.
We've had guests on before that we've asked that question, and they're like, I don't have any. And I'm like, oh, yes, you do.
Everyone
We all
has
do.
an
You
it's
just
moment.
obviously don't want to admit it.
That's it.
Oh,
Would
my
you
goodness.
admit to another one? What's the monster under your bed? What gives you, Randy Savig, the heebie-jeebies?
Honestly,
Yes.
will goddamn put me out of the woods quicker than anything else is dead silence.
I can relate with that.
You know, I have been in areas where, again, you've got all your crickets, you got all your tree frogs, and all of a sudden everything goes quiet. You know, I mean, I've had it happen probably 4 times, 5 times, and each time every hair on the back of my neck and my arms and probably my hairy legs too stand up. And there's just such an eerie feeling. All but twice I have packed up, left the chairs, didn't even douse the fire ring, and went. You know, one of them when it hit, we were on one of the few night hikes. I don't feel my feet and legs. So when I'm on a night hike, I have to have light to be able to reference the ground, or I fall. I can't walk without referencing the ground. And we went on a night hike. And I was responsible for some grandchildren that night that we had brought out. We went on that night hike because they were bored. Now, we weren't more than 100 yards from camp. And we stopped just for whatever reason. You know, I was getting tired. We stopped. And even though the kids were still talking, all of a sudden they went quiet. Why is it so quiet? And I was spooked. I said, let's go back to camp. We'd walk for a while, and then the noise would come back, and we'd stop. And for a few seconds, up to a minute, all the noises were normal. Oh, dang. And then the second time, it stopped again.
Ooh.
And at that, I don't know, it was kind of almost a blank. Away we went. We made it all the way back to the truck, you know, and the grandkids, yep, we're going to put out the fire and this and that. And then, you know, Bernie was there, and again, he's noticing that quiet too. And I said, we got to get the hell out of here. We got to get the hell out of here. I mean, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to use that type of language, but that's where
fine.
it was at. I was at the point of panicking. We threw the chairs in the back of the truck. I grabbed the camp recorder, did not shut it off, did not put it away, just grabbed it, put it in the truck, and we left. And that is probably, you know, again, I know that large predators, it's been said that bears can have that effect, cougars can have that effect, but I don't think it was either one of them.
Yeah, and you had your grandkids. I know with kids, sometimes activity gets a little odd. So I can understand you having your grandkids, you wanted them out of there.
Yeah, because that was and I'm sitting here with goosebumps right now. That was the one time that was the scaredest I have been since Bigfoot. And I mean, I've had some weird stuff. I had rocks thrown at the truck one night when I was by myself, and the other 2 guys were on a night hike. They had to come running back. I called it the rock throwing incident. If it wasn't for the researchers that were with me that night, I probably wouldn't have went back in the woods. You know, long story short, when it was all done and said for, and I reviewed that night's entire files, they were around the camp throughout the night from time to time. And when they went for a walk, I just kind of scooted up closer to the truck in the dark, was wearing headphones because I had the parabolics going, and a rock, in fact, it's sitting here on my kitchen counter, landed on the top of my cab of my truck. And I overreacted immensely, and there was a lot of weird stuff that went on. When they got back to camp, one of them hollered, "There's something right behind us," and we all hit over there with the lights. And that, I don't know if one that felt pinned down got away, but all the activity ceased at that point. And we're talking through with them that night, and then reviewing it and finding out that 9 chances out of 10 it was they just weren't sure if I was there, and was using that rock lobbing up on the truck to see if I was there, and I overreacted. And, you know, that was a scary, scary situation for me, but not like when it goes so quiet that there is nothing around. That just takes me over the edge, and that's my red herring. I'm out of here. There's no more to it.
End of game, huh?
Yeah,
That's it. I mean, you know, when you were talking about the grandkids.
Yes.
You were talking about the grandkids. You know, some of the most neatest experiences we've had is when we've had kids out with us. Now, again, this troop that I've been dealing with, I mean, they pretty well know us. I have no doubt. I mean, I think at times they use us for entertainment, just as we do them. We had the kids out one night, and how it happened was, our daughter called kind of in a panic. It was the 23rd of December. They had a house full of gifts hid that they hadn't wrapped yet, and Christmas is right around the corner. Well, again, my wife had been at work all day. She'd worked 10 hours that day like normal, and she really didn't want to have the kids come over, but, you know, we had to be good grandparents. I said, "Hey, I'll take them to the woods." So Bernie was here, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to the woods with the grandkids tonight." So he went and got his granddaughter, and out to the woods we went. Well, what we do sometimes when we take 2 vehicles into the woods is Bernie will drop his off closer to the road, kind of in an opening that's there. And then he'll walk the mile in to where we have our listening post. Well, he did that night. And by golly, you know, we were sitting there, the kids were getting bored. There wasn't a lot going on. And Bernie said, "Well, I'm going to go and get my truck." And I said, "Hey, cool." I said, "Why don't you take a radio with you? When you guys get there, do some screams, and I'm going to do some howls back, and let's see if we can, you know, draw something in." And he said, "Hey, cool, that sounds like a good idea." Well, the 3 granddaughters that we had with us, his 1 and 2 of mine, they wanted to go with Bernie. Well, my grandson, he didn't want to go. He wanted to stay with Papa. So they go, and, you know, again, I don't know, 20 minutes later, whatever it was, over the radio it comes that, you know, they're ready. So I said, "Well, I'll do a howl first, and then you guys go ahead and do a scream, and then I'll do a howl. We'll go back and forth a couple times, see what happens." And I did a howl. The girls all screamed back again. And when they screamed, you know, let's say that if I was looking at where they were at, you know, was 12 o'clock. Over at 9 o'clock, something screamed. And it sounded a lot like the girls. They screamed again. It screamed again. I radioed back, "Did you guys just scream once, or did you scream twice?" "Oh, we just did once." They couldn't hear it where they were at, but we could hear it at camp. We did it a couple of more times, and the screaming continued. Well, they got in the truck, and they came back, and it seemed to follow right up to where the area that they were screaming at. About every 30 seconds, maybe 45 seconds, it would give another scream, and then it would give another scream until it got up to where they were at. And then it ceased. It quit. And, you know, to this day, hindsight being 2020, we should have left Bernie there, told Bernie to stay put till it gets there, you know, but we didn't know. And again, we've had a lot of neat activities when we've had kids out there.
Just out of curiosity, do you mind sharing the age range of those children?
Well, when we first started taking out the grandchildren, they were 5 and 7, and the other, or my grandson was 5, his sister was 9, and Bernie's was 7. Well, now Bernie's granddaughter is 15, so it tells you how long they've been coming out with us.
Hey, at least they're interested in wanting to go.
Oh, you got that right. In fact, we got a granddaughter that's 16. She's a junior, or 17. She'll be graduating next year, and she took time off from work to go to the goddamn Bigfoot conference with us here. So, you know, that's how important it is to her. She'll take time off from work to be able to go to see a Bigfoot conference. So,
boy, if I could only get my daughter to do that.
Our daughter has other interests. However, our son, who is now 5 going on 6, is gung-ho in the woods. He'll go anytime he can.
Yeah.
And we have a granddaughter also who's about 10, and she's also gung-ho to the woods.
Yeah, they want...
Oh.
They always want to go out, and we try to take them out at least once a year, and they just love it. They absolutely love it.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of which,
again, it's so good for them.
Yeah. I don't know if I asked this and if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. How often do you get to go out?
Well, from when I started researching in 2010 till about 2017, I was probably out 2 or 3 times during the day looking for sign and different things and trying to find tall boy trails, structures, that type of thing. And I did that every week for those years for the most part. I mean, if it was too cold, I wouldn't. Too hot, I wouldn't. And then during that time frame, about every 10 to 12 days, we would go out on a night's adventure listening post where I'd set up anywhere from 3 to 5 recorders each time we went out at night. And that was, again, for about 7 years there. Since then, again, my legs have not cooperated, and other things have come up in life. So, you know, the last couple of years, there was my best year in audio recording. I recorded 1,400 and some odd hours when, you know, in 1 year's time. And last year there was only like 580 or something. This year,
those are impressive.
Yeah, those are still impressive numbers.
Well, thank you. But again, I wish I could do more, but again, sometimes time and effort and abilities just don't follow up. You know,
it happens with the best of us.
I'm also guessing that you probably live within 2 hours of your site. You're not handicapped like us, where we have a 6 to 8 hour drive anytime we want to go anywhere.
Well, again, this part of the Ozarks, I mean, my main research area I can get to in under a half hour. The places that we do expeditions down in Oklahoma and parts of the Ozark National Forest in Arkansas, in an hour and a half I can be there. And again, those are some of the, I really don't like the term, but I don't know how else to say, some of the squatchiest areas that you'll ever find.
I know what you're referring to.
And, you know, we've got a large group of people, and I'm not talking anything more than a lot of people that are researching these different areas, to where when we go to those areas, the one that over in Oklahoma, that guy is out all the time and knows that troop and knows their routines. And when we go out and get together for an expedition, he can pretty well put us in an area where he can almost, you know, as much as you can guarantee a wild animal moving through the territory, that they're going to be here during this week or these 2 weeks or whatever. And that's when the expeditions and stuff get fun, because you've got the routine down, you know where to go, you can set up, and if they're in the area, you're going to have some activity. and that's where evidence collection and stuff could be so much fun because, when we go on these expeditions with the MABRC and the Apes group, they're also they're kind of like brother groups to us. We get together, we've got the people with the best thermals, we've got video people, we've got people with plot watcher cameras and different things, we got our best trackers, we bring in a bunch of audio folks. When we hit an area, in a 3-day expedition on a long weekend or 4-day if it's a holiday weekend, we can generally come up with some pretty good evidence collection. Not only just audio, but we can have audio with experiences, or we can have thermal with, prints. We can, and it really has a way of bringing things together and learning so much about their typical behaviors when they're in those certain areas.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you about those areas. Do you notice a preference for hardwoods, or do you tend to see it more in a mix of hardwoods and pine, or do you have more? I guess what I'm saying is, what kind of
terrain
of
wood.
fauna or flora usually is most conducive?
Well, again, there a lot of this area around here and where we deal with in Arkansas and Oklahoma, it is more mixed. There's hardwoods, there's cedars, there's pines. But again, I think the time of the year makes a difference too.
Okay.
Again, when the weather is bad and cold, if they don't have someplace, you'll see them more in your cedars and pines because it's windbreaks. Here in my part of Missouri, there's enough overhangs and, deep hollers where they can get down to avoid the wind. I had one old timer, and I don't remember who it was, and if he's listening, please remind me who you were, because don't remember. But they said that one of the keys that he had to finding Bigfoot activity was go up during the summer and down during the winter.
That makes sense.
And again, they got to have the wind to keep cool in the summertime. They got to get out of the wind to stay warm in the wintertime. And I've after I was told that, I did do some serious looking, and I found some places at the top of a holler, finger holler that goes up and kind of funnels together. You get up on where a southerly breeze comes through, and you can find what looks like manipulations to make shade, where if it's only a 5-mile-an-hour wind out there, you sit there, and there's quite a decent breeze funneling up through there.
Mm-hmm.
And, I can't help but believe the guy was right, because I've found that to be pretty prevalent most of the time. They have to get into the wind to stay cool, and they have to get into the wind to stay cool, and they have to get out of the wind to stay warm.
That's logical.
And a lot of times, if there's no tree cover in the wintertime, even in my own research area, that's why that Pine Ridge is as interesting as it is. Cedar groves and stuff, I seem to get more audio out of those during the wintertime than I do the summertime.
I'm going to have to pay more attention to that.
Yeah, that gave us food for thought for sure.
Yes,
Thank you,
did.
Randy.
Yes, it did. That actually filled in a little missing piece of the puzzle there for thoughts I've had of my own, and I'm actually going to go apply that here in a couple of weeks. See if there's any.
You'll have to let me know how it turns out.
It will. It will. We have we actually just finalized a new area, and we've got this area, and it's an entire valley with 2 ridge lines actually going around it, and so we have both.
Pretty much a bowl.
Yeah, it's almost like a bowl. And so we have the high, and then we have the sheltered low as well. And I was wondering where I should because we've only just started surveying this area, and I that gives me an idea of where
you
want
want
to
to go
ahead and concentrate it now. So I'm gonna go focus towards the down on this trip and everything. But it'll be interesting this summer to see if the upper elevations do actually pan out to have some more.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, I was about to say the only thing about this area is it's not been heavily logged, and so we've got a predominance of hardwood. There's not a whole lot of pine in it. Now there is some cedar, but there's actually very little pine in this area. It's a very rugged area, and so it didn't get logged a whole lot, and so.
Well, again, and part of what I like about the Ozarks and part of my research area is, again, at the bottom of every one of these haulers is usually some live water. I mean, we got tons of springs and different things like that.
Right.
And that's what I've noticed out in that Arkansas and Oklahoma area, too. I mean, if there's water going through there, I think that if there's a river going through there, you're going to have Sasquatch activity along that river.
Yes.
And, here it doesn't seem to need a river, again, because at the bottom of these haulers, there is nothing but springs all the time. And, so again, if there's live water, that's predominant area for them. And in your new area, I mean, if you've got a stream that's going through it or some springs, I mean, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me a bit if you'll have some pretty good activity there.
I'm hoping so. Well, Randy, we're going up. We're pushing 2 hours here, so we're going to wrap up
and let you get on to your daily life.
You've got more audio to go through. But no.
Well, a little bit.
We certainly appreciate you giving us the time to come on and visit with us.
It was a thoroughly enjoyable experience.
Well, thank you. And again, you guys have made it easy. And, on the show or off the show, any questions, that I might be able to help out with audio or stuff, you give me a shout.
I actually have one that I'm going to forward to you here in a few minutes. I would like your opinion on. It's kind of it's got to be about the strangest audio that I've ever recorded, and I'm at my wit's end trying to figure out what actually we caught on audio. But anyway,
okay,
we're going to go ahead and wrap the show up, and thank you very much for coming.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Okay,
I'll see you soon.
Have a good night.
Yep. Good night to you folks too.
Okay.
Bye.
Guests of Cryptid Connection are all members of the Cryptid Connection website. Join the community, a safe, secure, and private place for all your paranormal and cryptid pursuits.
Every cowboy, he always misses when he's aiming at the target in his head. And every broken finds his idle hands grasping at tomorrow's promised land. And I've been thinking about running, and I'll get out on the town just for myself. And that's when I saw her, and she looked right through me. And when I said I do that day, I really do. 'Cause every cowboy, he always misses his shot when he's aiming at the target in his head. And gotta leave this town to find my way. And when that plane touched down on that island town, I knew that my life's work was in their hands. So I started digging for wells of water, and I'm a hero in their eyes. It's clear to see. 'Cause every cowboy, he always misses his shot when he's aiming at the target in his head. And every broken man finds his idle hand, grasping at tomorrow's promised land. And I've been thinking about the time that I have wasted sitting here. 'Cause I've been thinking that all this thinking is the thing that keeps me further from myself.
The music and soundtrack for the opening is from Epic Film Score by Alex Kaskin. The closing credits are Every Cowboy by Cellophane Sam.